I'm Charlie Ray with Nature's Outlet and Amplified Naturals, and with me tonight I have Dr. Pat Kennedy from Kennedy Health and Wellness.
Hey, Charlie.
How we doing?
Excellent.
Good. And I've got John Rigdon. He is a nutrition guru, loves to educate people and help consult with people and give them great nutrition advice and advise them on what supplements to use.
I do. So, long time no see.
That's right. Thanks for coming from the office over to here, and it's much appreciated. Tonight we want to talk about salt. Is it good or is it bad for your health? And I guess before we get too far into that question, I just want to talk about, man has a long, interesting history with salt. And we're actually coming from Roanoke, Virginia. Roanoke is an Indian word. And what does that Indian word mean?
I bet it means salt. What do you think?
Does it really mean Big Lick?
Yeah.
Oh, because we used to be called Big Lick.
Right.
Yeah.
And why was Roanoke called Big Lick?
Because the deer were licking the salt.
Because there was a bunch of salt right there where Roanoke was formed.
Really?
And they would come down, and it was a hunting ground for Indians because they knew the deer were attracted to the salt, and they would hunt the deer.
That's so unfair.
It is kind of cheating, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. But think about it. You got your deer, and you got your salt right there. You put them on your deer.
You didn't even have to. They were brine.
Yeah, they were already salty.
It was like the Chick-fil-A of hunting.
They used to salt meats, right, in the old days before they had refrigerators, right?
Yep.
So it must be good for you.
Well, yeah, think about the spice trade. Spices were all about being able to preserve food, and salt was probably the single most important one.
Literally allowed our survival for a long time.
So how did it turn into being such a bad thing then?
Well, I don't know, but I've got more history. I did research, and it's so rare that I do research for these things that I got to spout out my research before I answer your question.
All right. Keep hitting that thing because I don't think the microphone's catching.
I don't think it's awake yet.
Right, Davis?
Yeah.
All right. So, how many years ago do you think man started using salt? What's the first evidence?
Wow. I'm going to defer to John because it's at least 10 years.
I'm going to go with 10,000 years.
That's pretty close. And it's probably longer than that, but the first archaeological evidence of a salt mine is about 6,000 years ago.
Okay.
No, 6,000 years BC, which is 8,000 years ago.
Okay.
So you're pretty close.
It's been, in other words, it's a long time. It's more than 10 years.
Very long time.
I was a little off.
And do you know where the origin of the word comes from? Salt.
It's the Latin derivative of saltameus.
Or actually, we're talking about the origin of the word salary.
Yes.
I said that backwards.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Can I just swallow a bullet?
I already did, so go ahead.
Oh, my God. So, the word salary is derived from the word salt, the Latin word, because Roman soldiers were thought to have been paid their salary in salt because it was so valuable.
And some smartasses say that's not the case, but it probably is. And we know for a fact that, like, in Ethiopia, they absolutely used salt as currency, and it was certainly used for bartering for a long time. So maybe even if it wasn't worldwide used as actual money, it was definitely always in high demand.
Well, in the research that I was doing, this was a controversy. Did the Romans say that or not say that? Did they not pay their soldiers? Or, it was all confusion. But we know that in the War of 1812, the federal government was completely broke, and they actually paid soldiers with salt. So,
really,
as recent as 1812.
Well, I mean, the saying, there's a lot of sayings that hold true today. It's not, you're not worth your weight in salt.
Right.
So there has to be
salt
some
of
truth
the earth.
Salt, right. Mm-hmm.
So salt's important.
By the way, Charlie, I would accept like a nice Celtic sea salt as payment if it ever.
If we got another viewer for the podcast,
if there's more inflation.
Oh right, well yeah,
I'm
no doubt.
accepting Celtic sea
No
salt.
more like salary. You just pay them in salt.
Salt, yeah. Well,
It's pretty good.
see how that goes. So, anyway, so there's a long history of salt. It's been important to mankind. There have been cities have risen and fallen based on the location and proximity to salt. So every civilization has sought it out because our bodies need it. It's an electrolyte. It's essential. Every cell in the human body requires salt. Every single one.
Like when you said that, I immediately thought of the sodium-potassium pump, which is in the cell membrane. So it's bringing salt in and pushing potassium out and back and forth. So it is a necessary, cellular mineral.
That's the battery of the cell. I mean,
Exactly.
that's how batteries work. That's
And
how electric
electric
charges.
impulses
Yeah.
through your nervous system.
Yeah.
If you don't have sufficient sodium, your nervous system suffers. So, can you get too much salt?
Yes.
You can. And it will have some impact on blood pressure if you have excess sodium, particularly if you are these electrolytes need to be in balance. Your body.
That's important. Difference between sodium and salt. I mean, big difference, right?
Let's hear it, because I don't
Let's
think I know.
elaborate. Let's elaborate.
Well, salt is it's a bond between two elements. I mean, it's this chemical bond. And of course, the most common form of salt that we're familiar with is sodium chloride. Mm-hmm. But there's all sorts of salts. You have, there's potassium chloride, calcium chloride, and then you have other elements other than chloride that bind to.
Yeah, they're generically called tissue salts, I guess, for lack of a better description.
Yeah.
But yeah, what most people think of is table salt, which is
Sodium chloride.
So that's kind of what we're referring to here. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of different salts.
Your canned food typically just has really high levels of sodium, not necessarily sodium chloride, and also not all those other trace minerals. So.
Yep.
Oh, so a question, and I don't know if what your research has said, but so if you have a food that's high in sodium, is that necessarily bad compared to if it was high in sodium chloride?
Well, I mean, look at, preserved meats and things like that in canned foods. Like a lot of times it's like sodium nitrate, sodium nitrite,
What about
sodium phosphate.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So these are all technically salts, but they're not the salt that we
Table
are referring to.
Table salt, right?
Yeah. And that chloride, I don't mean to steal all your research, Charlie, but chloride is a big deal. I mean, that's important.
Yeah. It actually health benefits in chloride.
Absolutely.
We're about to get to that. So what does salt do in the body? It actually, there are health functions, and you touched on it with the electrical nerve impulsing and the balancing with the other electrolytes. But what are those electrolytes doing in a more general way? Any ideas?
Muscle function, bowel function.
Yep.
Yeah, when I hear muscle function, I hear electrolytes. I hear heart.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
because
sure.
heart is a muscle,
Right.
and that's one of my things with patients who take, for back spasms, where they're taking muscle relaxers, and I'm taking muscle relaxer. I said, but your heart's a muscle too, and you're relaxing your heart for your back spasm.
Right.
May or may not be a good thing. I don't know. And then usually patients, jibe back with me. It's like, well, I could use to relax a little bit.
Right.
Like, well, I don't know if that's the right way to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of it has to do with balancing hydration.
Yeah.
So people that are dehydrated actually need sodium. Strangely enough.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
Because
think that.
what does it pulls water
It's
into
a
the
water.
cell.
It's a water grabber.
Yeah.
So it pulls water into the system. So we have this stereotype of salt being bad for us because excess sodium can elevate blood pressure, and there's truth to that. That's But what we're finding is that this idea of cutting salt out of the diet, guess what happens when you cut all the salt out of the diet? Guess what disease you actually increase the risk of? Cardiovascular disease, among others.
Surprise.
And you also have all kinds of nervous
Okay, hold the phone. Okay, so the prevailing, theory and medical protocol out there is if you have high blood pressure, you got to cut the salt out, and you're saying that you're creating more cardiovascular problems.
You can, yes.
And they're telling you to do this to help your cardiovascular system.
Correct.
So they're actually giving you advice that could cause more cardiovascular problems.
Yeah. The idea is you've got a range of homeostasis, and you want to have enough salt in your diet so that you're basically able to achieve homeostasis. And so obviously excess salt can cause problems. Insufficient salt can cause problems.
I would argue bigger problems. I would argue
bigger problems with less.
Low sodium is a more serious problem than high sodium.
Because your functions in general can just it's required to function.
Because your body can excrete excess stuff. Your body cannot manifest salt out of
I think
thin
that's a good
air.
way of thinking about
Ooh.
it. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it.
Because there's a lot of people out there who have bought into, since the 1970s, I can't have salt, I can't have salt, can't have salt. And they're on blood pressure medications that are basically diuretics to get more fluid off their system. And you're saying that they're already dehydrating anyway. And I find these patients they still have high blood pressure. And they still have cardiovascular things, and they're staying on these medications, and they're staying away from salt, which maybe you guys are telling me it's perpetuating the problem.
Yeah, and it's no fun. I mean, people don't feel good when they don't have enough salt. They feel tired. They feel lethargic. Their nerves aren't working right. Their nervous system is just not firing
Digestive
optimally.
issues.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into that. So back to your chloride. Yes. Okay, the chloride. Guess what? When you eat salt, guess what the body does with the chloride? Hydrochloric acid. If you don't have enough salt, you can't make hydrochloric acid, and your digestive system starts to break down.
Is that why everybody's got indigestion?
Probably.
Well, among other
people that
reasons,
are on low-salt diets.
Low-salt diets are not going to be helpful.
Who tends to have all these digestive issues, this indigestion, acid reflux? It tends to be older people who are most often put on low-salt diets.
Mm-hmm. And diuretics.
Also, people think that heartburn is excess acid. It's actually you notice we get older, our bodies aren't as good at making hydrochloric acid. It's actually an insufficiency of acid, because now the stuff's fermenting in your gut. You're not able to your acid isn't strong enough. There is still some acid, and what happens is the fermentation, everything floats upward into your esophagus. And it burns because there is some degree of acidity, but it's actually
fermentation.
Yeah, but so it's counterintuitive, but basically reflux is hypo, meaning not enough acid. So that's just another piece that salt plays in the puzzle.
And let's think about what that means. That means that your body needs salt to be able to digest your food and absorb and utilize all the other vitamins and minerals in your body. I mean, if you don't have proper digestion, if you don't have stomach acid, you can't cleave, all the other minerals, the magnesium and the B12 and all these vitamins and minerals and nutrients.
There are certain nutrients that you can't absorb if you have insufficient stomach acid. Wow. So it leads to nutrient deficiencies. And what does the acid also do in your gut?
Burns holes and stuff.
Particularly bad pathogens that you ingest.
Yeast,
it
candida,
kills. You eat food, and believe it or not, bacteria is everywhere. You know, it's not like there's just 6 of them around here.
And your mouth is like the border of countries. Like, things get in.
Yeah.
And,
I talked to a dentist the other day, and they were saying that under microscope, if you look at plaque, which is hard, you can see a plethora of movement inside the plaque that is living bacteria sitting in there in the plaque, moving around. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting. Like, it makes you think about, gee, I don't know if I want to be kissing anymore.
Yeah.
So it goes down, first line of defense, hydrochloric acid, cooks it. Most of them die. But not enough acid. Guess what gets in there? And now you start getting downstream issues in your digestion, and you start getting leaky gut issues, and starts leading to autoimmunity and all kinds of other crazy messes. So, salt is a big part of all of that.
We're swimming upstream, okay? We're swimming upstream because everybody's been marinating in. You got high blood pressure. You got to stay away from salt. You got to take diuretics and these blood pressure medications. And that's what you got to do. And what you're saying is you might have a salt deficiency. So I feel terrible for the viewers because what are, here we are, just 3, guys sitting here yakking it up. And they go, oh, well, I'm going to believe these guys versus, my doctor's telling me to take, get off salt and take, blood pressure medications. What do we got to tell them?
So a really interesting thing that I hear from a lot of customers, a lot of people, is that their doctor restricts the amount of water they can consume, that they can drink. And they do that because they're on a low salt diet. When you're on a low salt diet, you also have to restrict the amount of water you consume because it's a balance, right? I mean, if you have very low salt and you're drinking lots of water, it can actually kill you. I mean, it will cause, there's a balance between the salinity in your blood, in the plasma, and the salinity of the cell. And, it flows in and out where it needs to be. It's like a balance. And so, these people are on water restriction, and we all know, I mean, who could argue with the fact that drinking water is really good for you? I mean, water is what we're made out of. It detoxifies you, cleanses you, it helps with circulation, and these people aren't able to do that. So, and that's directly because of being on a low salt diet. So anything, in my opinion, that prevents you from being able to drink the recommended amount of water on a daily basis is complete garbage advice from a doctor. If you're on a water restriction where you can only have 3 glasses of water a day, I think that's bull.
Whoops. Yeah. This is what I like to hear.
So here's...
But is it your opinion or is that science?
Well, I think it's both.
I mean, you're basing your opinion off of science.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go. This
on their end.
This is an informed opinion. Okay, opinion. But there's a mechanism for this. There's a mechanism for regulating your salt levels in your body. It's called thirst. If you're thirsty, you need more water. What does the more water do? It's going to rinse down and dilute the sodium, among other things that it does. So you actually, when you get thirsty, your body, among other things, is regulating sodium balance. If you eat salty foods, what do you want to do?
Yeah, you want to drink some water.
Why do they give you salty pretzels at the bar? So you'll drink a beer.
So you'll go order more drinks.
Exactly.
Wow, no kidding.
So let's have some confidence in our body's ability to produce homeostasis and understand that the thirst mechanism is a regulator of sodium.
You just hit on the reason why we call this the doctor within. Because the doctor within knew, hey, I'm thirsty. I probably need some more sodium.
The deer instinctively knew they needed more sodium. What do?
They lick the salt.
They run down to the creek bed and lick the salt.
Wow.
Farmers know they put salt licks out there for their cattle. They don't monitor their cattle and like, well, how many licks has that cow had today? They don't count it. They don't have a clicker. They just let them go and let them self-regulate. When the cow needs sodium, the cow goes to the salt lick. When the cow needs water, it goes and drinks water. That's how it works.
Man, it's almost like animals trust the doctor within them more than people do.
Well, yeah. What else can they do? They've got to rely on their instincts.
I'm gonna start licking myself a lot more.
Right.
You knew it was going to spin down at some point.
Yeah, I just hope you have a lot of water.
Oh boy.
So anyway, just real quick. So we'll close it up with just talking about there's different types of salt, right?
Okay.
And what types of salt have you heard of or familiar with?
Well, number one, table salt.
Table salt. Okay, that's just sodium chloride. Okay, what else?
Pickling salt.
He would go with pickling salt.
Of course, he would.
He's got to go into the exotic realm of pickling salts.
Yeah.
But I was going to say sea salt,
Sea salt.
right? And then now if you're watching
Himalayan
these
salt.
cooking shows, yeah, you got Himalayan and you got Celtic sea salt, which is what the French people use. And then you got the kosher salt.
Well, that's pickling.
Is that pickling salt? The kosher salt?
I was trying to be inclusive.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Not strictly a Jewish show.
I see.
Okay.
Right. I'll give you props for that. So anyway,
Celtic sounds Irish.
it does, doesn't it? Yeah, and it tends to be. It actually tends to have a little bit of moisture in it.
What if you mix a bunch of them together? Is that good?
It probably doesn't matter a huge amount. But I'll talk real briefly about. Okay, so what gives Himalayan salt its color? It's kind of pinkish, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think that is?
Wow.
It's another mineral. That's a hint.
You're puzzled too. Magnesium?
Iron.
Oh yeah, because of the pink. Duh.
Yep. So what you have? Okay, so table salt is it's a refined product, and a couple of things I don't like about it. It doesn't include other minerals. Sea salts contain other minerals. Okay, which your body uses. So table salt is secondary to sea salts from a health perspective for that reason, but maybe even more significantly is because they use chemicals to refine it, and they use and they use anti-caking chemicals. That's what keeps it from sticking together in the shaker. You notice it's almost a universal consistency. That's because they're using chemicals to do that. So those are reasons to favor sea salt over table salt.
Okay.
So your sea salts, the mineral variability is probably not enough to really worry about. I kind of dug into this topic a little bit. It's more about go ahead and accommodate your taste preference. And then actually Himalayan is popular with the culinary people. A lot of it's just for the visual effect, to be honest with you.
But you're only getting iron.
No, you're getting magnesium and a bunch of trace minerals. No, it's very mineral rich.
Volcanic salt. They actually have black salt, and it's going to have fulvic acid in it, which is really good for you.
So
they put that on like
there are
sushi
probably
and stuff.
I guess these days with the way the world's going, there's probably a lot of little boutique type salts. But generally speaking, pick the sea salt you like and use it. You can also bathe in it. And your body knows, this is the cool thing, is when you bathe in salts, you're soaking in magnesium and other minerals. It relaxes your tense muscles.
It's good for your brain.
Helps with pain. It balances everything out. Well, think about it. You're improving the electrical signaling. It tends to alleviate pain. It's very safe. And what's cool about doing it topically is apparently the body, once again, the wisdom within, if it wants more, it sucks more in. And if it doesn't need it, it doesn't suck more in. So
saline, IVs.
Yeah.
We literally pump salt water in people when they're sick, when they're dying. And you have doctors telling people not to eat it.
That just doesn't make sense.
Your eyes, saline solution. People that wear contacts. I mean.
So yeah,
you're using salt.
So let's sum it up. So salt,
salt's good.
Salt's good. You need salt. You got to have it. The difference between medicine and poison can be in the dose. that could be true of anything. Get the right amount of salt is good. The good news there is the body's actually pretty adept at regulating it on its own. And then buy better salts. Get some sea salts and some things, and make your food taste good and enjoy it. Okay, so the debate on salt will probably rage on and on as to whether it's healthy or not healthy. I would like to just point out to people that it is not universally not healthy, that there's actually a lot of things that happen in your body that require salt, so it's actually necessary. And
Can't live without it.
too little salt, probably worse than having too much salt. So let's get some salt. And then the other idea that I have, big idea, is the body's pretty good at regulating the salt on its own. Like, we don't have to get too crazy about worrying about salt.
Cows don't worry about
They
too much
don't.
salt.
When they need salt, they lick the salt lick. When they don't, they drink water. It's pretty simple. So once again, we're letting the doctor within handle the issue. So I'm Charlie. This is Pat Kennedy. This is John Rigdon. And we are with the doctor within because
The doctor in here is way smarter than the doctor out there.